August 15th, 1944, near Avranches, France. The rain hasn't stopped in 2 days. The once dry Norman lanes have turned into rivers of brown muck, swallowing tracks, boots, and hope alike. From a hilltop orchard, Major Friedrich Keller of the German 2nd Panzer Division lowers his field glasses and swears under his breath. Below him, the road is a nightmare. Stalled panzers buried to their turrets, half-tracks jackknifed in ditches, and infantry slogging waist-deep through the sludge. But what draws his attention isn't the chaos of his own retreat. It's the impossible sight beyond it. On the far side of the flooded causeway, a column of American Jeeps is moving, fast. Through sheets of rain, Keller watches the tiny vehicles splash through water that would stall any tank. They're light, open, almost ridiculous in appearance. Barely higher than a man's shoulder, engines humming like sewing machines. Yet they bound over the terrain like mountain goats. One leaps from a makeshift ramp of wooden planks, lands with a splash, and keeps going. Keller lowers his binoculars. "Das ist unmöglich," he mutters. "That's impossible." His aide, soaked and shivering beside him, shakes his head in disbelief. "They have no armor, Herr Major." Keller replies quietly, almost to himself. "They have mobility." Down below, the U.S. 4th Armored Division pushes forward, Jeep after Jeep weaving between stalled tanks and wrecked wagons. The drivers wear goggles and rain ponchos, shouting above the roar of the engines. A Jeep carries ammunition in wooden crates. Another tows a 37mm anti-tank gun through mud where a Panzer IV had sunk hours earlier. The little machines are everywhere. Scouts, messengers, medics. One rolls by with a red cross painted on its hood, a stretcher lashed across the back, carrying a wounded GI wrapped in a blanket. The scene is chaos and efficiency all at once. The raw, improvisational genius of the American war machine in motion. As the column disappears into the fog, Keller exhales sharply. His panzers, symbols of German engineering pride, are stranded behind him. The Americans' toys, as he'd once mocked them, have crossed the river first. And in that moment, Keller understands. The age of the armored giant is ending, and the era of mobility has begun. 2 days later, somewhere near Le Mans, the sun has finally returned, drying the fields into a patchwork of cracked mud and dust. On a makeshift supply road, a convoy of jeeps races ahead of the main columns, engines buzzing like angry hornets. Each carries its own small story. A radio operator hunched over static-filled transmissions, a medic clutching a helmeted patient, an officer barking orders into the wind. Private Jack Red Hanley grips the wheel of his Jeep with both hands, a cigarette clenched between his teeth. His passenger, Lieutenant Sam Porter, studies a tattered map that flutters in the wind. "Next bridge in 4 miles, Porter shouts. Hanley nods, squinting past the dust. Ahead, the road dips into a shallow riverbed, the bridge long since blown by retreating Germans. Hanley doesn't slow down. He shifts into second, then first, and guns it straight into the water. The Jeep splashes through, its tires churning like paddles. For a moment, the entire vehicle disappears under a curtain of spray, then bursts through the far bank, dripping but alive. Porter laughs, pounding the dashboard. "Hell, Red, I think this thing could swim to Paris." Behind them, a Sherman tank commander watches the stunt through binoculars, shaking his head. His own vehicle is still waiting for engineers to lay steel planks across the crossing. "Damn fool Jeep jockeys," he mutters. But there's admiration in his tone. The Jeep's secret isn't magic, it's simplicity. Built by Willys Overland and Ford, it weighs just 2,250 pounds. With a 60-horsepower Go Devil engine and a ground clearance that makes it almost amphibious. It can tow a field gun, carry 4 men, or be stripped down and dropped from a glider. Mechanics joke that it's the one machine in the U.S. Army you can fix with a wrench, wire, and a prayer. The German officers can't believe it. In captured field reports later found near Falaise, one Oberst wrote in frustration, "The Americans advance as if the terrain does not exist. These small cars go where tanks cannot, through hedges, over rivers, across shell holes. Their mobility defies all doctrine." In reality, it's not just a car. It's a philosophy on wheels. The Jeep embodies the American approach to war: speed, adaptability, and improvisation. It's a battlefield chameleon, serving as command car, ambulance, courier, gun platform, and radio truck. Sometimes all in the same day. At night, its silhouette vanishes into darkness. Soldiers nickname it everything from the Blitz buggy to the Peep. One GI paints L'Île Bastard on his hood. Another writes, "To Berlin or bust." By late August 1944, Jeeps are leading the charge across France. They ferry reconnaissance patrols ahead of tanks, their engines coughing as they bounce through hedgerows and fields of wheat still smoldering from artillery fire. A dozen at a time roll into liberated villages. Headlights covered, children chasing behind them shouting, "Chocolate! Chewing gum!" Meanwhile, German officers look on from shattered headquarters, staring at maps that no longer make sense. The Americans are everywhere. Not because of size, but because of speed. Back in his temporary command post near Chartres, Major Keller writes in his report, "The enemy's armor is not what threatens us most. It is his movement. His vehicles are small, numerous, and unafraid of terrain. They are like ants on the march, impossible to stop once begun." Outside, the faint growl of another Jeep engine echoes through the fields. September 2nd, 1944. Outskirts of Mons, Belgium. The thunder of artillery fades behind the retreating German lines. The smell of gasoline and churned earth hangs thick in the air as the U.S. Third Army surges eastward. Along the narrow roads, Jeeps stream past like blood through arteries, carrying messages, medics, engineers, and officers, a constant, tireless pulse of motion. Sergeant Paul McLean, a wiry Kansas farm boy, drives his Jeep like it's part of him. A steel helmet dangles from the mirror, dog tags clinking against the windshield. In the back seat sits a scrambled field radio, wires snaking around extra jerry cans and ration crates. His job: keep the front lines talking to headquarters, no matter what the road looks like. The road today is barely that: a muddy farm track littered with wreckage and smoking craters. But McLean doesn't flinch. He leans into the steering wheel, the engine whining as the Jeep leaps a shell hole and lands with a jarring thud. "Come on, baby," he mutters. The Jeep coughs, spits, and keeps going. At the same moment, a few hundred meters away, a German reconnaissance patrol watches from a tree line. Feldwebel Otto Reich adjusts his binoculars, tracking the Jeep's progress through his field glasses. "Look at it," he says to his men, half in disbelief. "No armor, no tracks, just speed." He turns to his companion, a veteran from the Eastern Front. "Back in Russia, even our light tanks would have bogged down in this muck." The older man grunts. "Americans don't need tanks," he replies, "when they have 1,000 of those." Indeed, that's the secret. While Germany produces brilliant, complex machines, the Panther, the Tiger, the half-track Stank-Ivs 251, America floods the front with simplicity. More than 600,000 Jeeps roll off assembly lines by the war's end, built with interchangeable parts that can be replaced in the field. Photographs from the campaign show Jeeps doing the impossible: pulling anti-tank guns through flooded ditches, carrying entire infantry squads standing on running boards, ferrying nurses and medics across mine-scarred roads, hauling aircraft fuel drums, machine guns, even field kitchens. One particularly ingenious unit in the 82nd Airborne bolts bazookas to the Jeep's frame and calls it mobile artillery. In Italy, mechanics turn them into makeshift trains, fitting rail wheels and driving them along captured tracks. German prisoners brought back to the rear sometimes gape as they pass motor pools filled with hundreds of Jeeps, some coated in dust, others already being stripped for parts. One officer remarks bitterly, "Every time we destroy one, 10 more appear. It is as if America grows them from the earth." For the men who drive them, the affection runs deep. Soldiers write home about their Jeeps the way one might speak of a loyal horse. "If this little beast makes it to Berlin," one GI scrawls on his dashboard, "I'm shipping her home." By autumn, the Jeep has become not just a vehicle, but a symbol. The American war distilled into metal. Fast, adaptable, unbreakable, and everywhere at once. As dusk settles over the fields near Mons, Sergeant McLean pulls up beside a disabled Sherman tank. Its crew waves gratefully as he tosses them a jerry can of fuel. "You fellas need a tow?" he jokes. One tanker laughs, shaking his head. "Hell, maybe we do." And as McLean's Jeep splashes off toward the next position, the tank commander mutters with a grin, "That damn thing moves like it's got wings." September 5th, 1944. Outside Namur, Belgium. The road east is chaos. German convoys, trucks, staff cars, even horse carts, choke the narrow lanes as they flee toward the Meuse River. The once proud Panzers of the Wehrmacht, their armor now streaked with mud and soot, sit immobile in ditches or half-submerged in marshland. Their great engines have fallen silent. From a ruined farmhouse overlooking the valley, Major Friedrich Keller of the 2nd Panzer Division scans the horizon through his field glasses once more. What he sees is not an advancing armored column, but a swarm, dozens, maybe hundreds, of small American vehicles cutting across fields, splashing through streams, and racing along farm tracks that his panzers couldn't even reach. He lowers his binoculars and mutters almost to himself, "Not machines, insects." Down below, U.S. infantry of the 5th Armored Division surge forward on oak Jeeps leading the charge. One climbs the riverbank, bouncing wildly as it fords through the shallows. 2 men in wet helmets cling to the hood, their rifles strapped tight, grinning through the spray. A second Jeep follows close behind, towing a 57mm anti-tank gun, its wheels slicing through the current. Behind them, engineers wade waist-deep in the river, laying planks for heavier trucks, while the Jeeps ferry messages, ammunition, and wounded men across the crossing before the first bridge is even secure. Their engines roar, coughing and spitting water, but never dying. Keller's aide, Lieutenant Kruger, stares beside him, stunned. "Sir, they're crossing already. We destroyed the bridge." Keller doesn't look away. "The bridge," he says coldly, "wasn't what they needed." He knows what this means. For weeks, he's watched the Americans advance at a pace that mocks every German plan. His division's Tigers and Panthers, technical marvels, mechanical nightmares, are fuel-starved, their transmissions failing in the mud. The Jeep, meanwhile, runs on almost anything, can be lifted by 4 men if stuck, and can cross terrain that would shred a Panzer's treads. In a captured report later recovered near Namur, Keller wrote, "Their small motor vehicles are unstoppable. They do not fear rivers or roads. We rely on the strength of our machines. They rely on the adaptability of theirs. In that difference, the outcome of this war is already written." By nightfall, The Americans are on the far bank. Dozens of jeeps now line the ridgeline, their silhouettes sharp against the setting sun. Headlights covered but glowing faintly through the dusk. Soldiers unload crates of K-rations and ammo boxes. A medic jeep rattles by, its stretchers rattling softly under canvas. Keller watches, silent, as his last remaining tank grinds to a halt beside him, engine smoking, fuel gone. The crew climbs out, faces gray and defeated. One of them spits into the mud. "We built fortresses," he says bitterly, "and they sent bicycles with motors." In the valley below, the Americans push on. Jeeps fan out like water flowing downhill, carrying dispatch riders, engineers, photographers, even chaplains. Their engines hum in the darkness, a mechanical heartbeat echoing across the wet plains. For the first time since Normandy, Keller feels something deeper than frustration. A realization. The war Germany built was too heavy to move. The war America built was light enough to fly. As thunder rumbles on the horizon and the last light fades, Keller turns away from the valley, his boots sinking into the mud. Behind him, the sound of the jeeps rises and falls with the wind, like the distant murmur of an unstoppable tide.